Hi everyone! If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I love talking about water mixable oils, and I've gotten quite a lot of questions about water mixable oil painting mediums. I already talked a little about them in my Water Mixable Oils 101 video, but I decided to make a separate video to share my experience and walk you through my vast collection of different fast-drying liquids, gels, thinners, and other kinds of water mixable mediums. I'll show you how they behave with different brands of water mixable paints and give you my honest take on what's worth using and what isn't. Now, without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's start with the paint thinners. I'm going to compare three different thinner options that I have on hand. Water, obviously, then Winsor Newton Artisan Thinner, and Cobra solvent-free paint thinner. I'm going to make a small chart to demonstrate the performance of the three thinners. I'm also going to use each medium with 4 different paints, each paint representing a different brand of water mixable oils. I use all 4 of them quite often, so they're not chosen at random. I'll take Raw Umber from Cobra, Natural Green Earth from Schminke, Alizarin Crimson from Winsor Newton, and Inner Blue from Holbein. Let's start with water. It's obviously the most accessible thinner, and as one would expect, it works great for thinning water mixable paints, and that applies to all brands in equal measure. It has a very good flow, but it also heavily warps the oil painting paper I'm using for this demonstration. You might want to go with something else if you would like your paint to have a bit more body and you're used to using traditional oil painting solvents like turpentine or maybe Gamsol. The Winsor Newton thinner has been around for a while, and people say that it has the most resemblance to working with turpentine. However, as you can see right away, it doesn't work well with all paints. For example, the resulting mixture with Cobra's Raw Umber paint is extremely crumbly, and the two just don't want to interact. I noticed the same thing happen with some of my other Cobra paints, which is a huge drawback for me since these probably make up more than half of all my water mixable oil paints. However, this thinner seems to work quite well with artisan paints, and I also didn't notice any issues when using it with Holbein's Dual Aqua range. I like the flow and consistency of this thinner the most because it doesn't have such a drastic warping effect, and it has a smoother, oilier sort of consistency, so it's really a shame that it doesn't work well with Cobra. Our last contender is Cobra's solvent-free paint thinner. Right away you can see that it has a slightly milky color and a thicker consistency than water or the Winsor Newton thinner. It interacts well with all of the paints, so there's no brand incompatibility here. However, you should keep in mind that it does have a bit more drag to it compared to water or the Winsor Newton thinner. I find that I need to use a lot more thinner to get the paint to flow better with this one. At the same time, I think it can be a good option depending on what you use your thinner for. I personally mainly use it for drawing on the canvas when I'm sketching out my composition and establishing the main shapes, which is how I usually start my paintings. So the thicker consistency of this medium can be a bit of a problem for me. As you can see, once they dry, water mixable paints mixed with water and the Winsor Newton thinner look more matte, while the Cobra thinner has a bit more of a glossy finish. Next, we're going to review the fast-drying mediums I have at my disposal. A fast-drying medium, as the name suggests, is a medium that is used to speed up the drying time, and they also come with the added benefit of having a glossier finish. What I currently have are the Winsor Newton fast-drying medium, both the old and the new versions, and 2 fast-drying mediums by Holbein, a quick-drying liquid and this quick-drying gel which comes in a tube. I know that Cobra also has a fast-drying medium, but I haven't gotten my hands on it yet. Let's start with the Winsor Newton Fast Drying Medium. I'm going to open the new bottle I have because it says on it that it uses an improved formula, so I want to review the best they have. Winsor Newton is my go-to fast dry medium, and I usually use it for my lead white paint formula, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. This medium has a consistency that is kind of similar to honey, and that negatively affects the flow of the paint, making it more tacky and sticky. The mixture has a very glossy finish, but I'll compare that parameter once these samples have dried. Next we have the Holbein Duo Aqua Quick Drying Liquid. It has a consistency that is very similar to Winsor Newton, but it has a slightly better flow, allowing for easier coverage. I also find that the color of the paints ended up being slightly brighter than with Winsor Newton. So I think it's a great option for artists that prefer to mix fast drying medium directly into their paint. Finally, we have the Holbein Quick Drying Gel, which dries glossy, but there's also a matte version available. It is extremely tacky and the paints don't flow at all when you try to paint thinly. However, I noticed that this medium has an advantage when it comes to thicker paint. It retains structure and texture a lot better than the other two mediums, so I think that its best application would be in pastel painting. All these mediums dry at about the same speed, although it might slightly vary depending on the pigment, the paint brand, and how thick the application is. Most paints will be dry to the touch within a couple of days if you apply the paint thinly. I would say that the main difference is that the Winsor Newton fast drying medium dries slightly more glossy than the other two mediums, so that's not a pro for me. I have three pure oil mediums, which are linseed oil and safflower oil from Cobra and stand linseed oil from Holbein. Both linseed oil and safflower oil will make the paint flow better and make it more glossy and transparent. Linseed oil is probably the most commonly used painting medium, and it's used as a binder in most paints. It dries faster than most oils and has strong binding qualities, making the paint film more durable. The main drawback of using linseed oil is that it can yellow over time, so that's something you might want to keep in mind. Unlike linseed oil, safflower oil doesn't yellow that much over time. That's why Cobra recommends using their safflower oil for the final layers of your painting, but I would be cautious with it because it creates a weaker paint film compared to linseed oil. It also dries slower than linseed oil, so it's not recommended for the underpainting and the lower layers. Stand oil is a thick polymerized linseed oil that has been heated at a high temperature in a vacuum for a long time. That causes it to thicken into this honey-like consistency and makes it more flexible, durable, and also less prone to yellowing compared to untreated linseed oil. However, its thick consistency can make it a little harder to work with. It actually works much better for glazing than for impasto because it has self-leveling properties, meaning that the paint becomes smooth after application and the brush strokes even out, creating a finish similar to enamel. As you can see, it's by far the glossiest of the oil mediums that I have. I'm calling this category painting mediums, but the only painting medium I currently have is Cobra's 091 painting medium. A painting medium will usually combine a blend of oil with some other components such as resins or alkyds, which will make it a bit more balanced. The 091 medium is my go-to medium for improving the flow of the paint. I would usually add a bit of it onto my palette and then dip my brush occasionally into it when I feel like the paint has a bit too much drag for my liking. Unlike oil mediums, it doesn't really influence the drying time of the paint, thanks to the addition of synthetic resin, which balances out the oil component of this medium. It can be used in layers, and since this painting medium increases the transparency of the paint, it's also good for glazing and other semi-transparent painting effects. It washes off easily and doesn't have a distinct smell, so I can recommend it if you're looking for a substitute for your oil mediums like linseed oil. Again, I only have one glazing medium, which is the Cobra glazing medium. Glazing mediums are used to create very smooth and transparent layers of paint called glazes. Cobra's 092 medium is a colorless medium that increases the transparency of the paint and also has self-leveling properties without the viscosity of stand oil. But Cobra says that it's based on vegetable oils, so it's likely sort of a modified stand linseed oil. The added benefit is that it doesn't influence the drying time of the paint foam, allowing to build layers quickly. Make sure to keep your glazes thin though, otherwise they can wrinkle and damage the painting over time. I already talked about my experience with Schminke's Medium W in my Water Mixable Oils 101 video, but let me quickly recap. I personally wasn't a huge fan of Medium W for two main reasons. First of all, it makes the paint too runny, which results in a completely different consistency and texture compared to your usual water mixable oils. And the second reason I'm not including it into my toolkit yet is that it doesn't let you use water to clean your brushes as effectively as real water mixable oils, leaving behind some residue. The only benefit that I think it can offer is that it allows you to use water as a thinner, unlike traditional oils. But I mostly use it to clean my brushes with water mixable oils, so this medium isn't really for me. If you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know that I add a special formula into my titanium white paint. Currently, every time I paint, I modify my titanium white by mixing it with a blend of stand oil, fast dry medium, and chalk. This formula is derived directly from Ben Valentine's adaptation of the Velasquez medium, so as usually, I'm giving him a huge shout out. Of course, Ben paints with traditional oils, so I had to adapt his formula to water mixable oils. The stand oil gives the paint rich, glossy consistency. The chalk adds body and a soft, velvety sort of texture, and the fast-drying medium helps speed up the drying time. The resulting paint is more translucent than titanium white, less overwhelming, faster drying, and it has a different consistency which allows to create effects we just can't achieve with titanium white. Again, all the credit goes to Ben Valentine, and I'm going to link his Instagram and website down in the description. He has an amazing recorded course on how to paint like Rembrandt, as well as other courses that take place on Zoom, all of which I highly recommend if you're interested in traditional painting techniques. And that concludes our tour through the mediums that I use with my water mixable oils. Hopefully now you have a better idea of how each of them behaves and which ones would work for your workflow. Let me know down in the comments which mediums are your favorite or least favorite, or if you tried any that I didn't mention here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel for more art shenanigans, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!